Rain pelted against the darkened storefronts of East Garfronts, one of Chicago's most notorious neighborhoods. Samantha Rodriguez, CEO of Tech Shield Solutions, squinted at her phone's screen, her manicured fingers flying across the keyboard as she fired off another urgent email. She'd taken a wrong turn after her rideshare driver dropped her at what he insisted was the correct address. Now, in her Louboutin heels and carrying a Hermes Birkin worth more than most residents' monthly rent, she was the definition of a target. Three shadowy figures emerged from an alleyway, their eyes locked on her expensive belongings. They began to follow her at a measured distance, exchanging subtle nods as they closed in on their unsuspecting prey. Samantha, absorbed in her digital crisis, remained oblivious to the danger stalking her through the rain-slicked streets. Michael Williams was driving his daughter Olivia home from her science club when his trained eye caught the predatory movement of the three men. At 42, the former Navy SEAL turned encryption specialist still maintained the heightened situational awareness that had kept him alive through 3 tours in Afghanistan. "Sweetie, stay in the car and lock the doors," he instructed his 8-year-old daughter firmly, eyes never leaving the scene ahead. "But Daddy," Olivia began, her dark curls bouncing as she sat up straighter. "No arguments. Lock the doors. I'll be right back." Something in his tone made Olivia obey immediately. She watched through the window as her father moved with purposeful strides toward the businesswoman and her pursuers, his posture shifting subtly from the gentle dad she knew to something more dangerous. Samantha finally sensed something was wrong when she heard footsteps quickening behind her. Glancing back, she saw 3 men closing the distance, their intentions clear in their focused expressions. Her heart rate spiked as adrenaline flooded her system. She clutched her bag tighter and quickened her pace, searching desperately for a well-lit storefront or passerby, but the rain-emptied streets offered no refuge. Just as the closest pursuer reached out toward her shoulder, a calm voice cut through the tension. "I believe the lady has somewhere to be." The 3 men turned to find Michael standing a few feet away, his stance relaxed but alert. The leader of the group smirked. "Mind your business, man. Walk away while you still can." Michael's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid I can't do that, so here's what's going to happen instead. You're going to leave this woman alone, and the 3 of you are going to walk away. Now." What happened next occurred so quickly that Samantha could barely process it. The first man lunged at Michael, who moved with liquid precision. A blur of controlled movement ended with the attacker face down on the pavement, his arm bent at an angle that made his companions step back in alarm. The second man foolishly rushed forward, only to meet a devastating strike that left him gasping for air on his knees. The third, wisely choosing self-preservation, turned and fled into the darkness. "Stay down," Michael advised the subdued attackers, his voice never rising above a conversational tone. "The police will be here soon." Indeed, he had already pressed an emergency call button on his watch at the first sign of trouble. Samantha stood frozen, her normally commanding presence diminished by shock. "Are you hurt?" Michael asked, maintaining a respectful distance while keeping the would-be thieves in his peripheral vision. She shook her head, unable to find words. "My car is just there," he continued, gesturing to a modest sedan parked a short distance away. "My daughter's inside. Let's get you somewhere safe until the police arrive." At the mention of his daughter, Samantha's eyes widened slightly. This man had intervened despite having a child nearby? The realization made his actions even more remarkable. "Thank you," she finally managed, her voice smaller than it had been in boardrooms where she commanded the attention of tech giants and venture capitalists. Olivia's curious face peered out from the car window as they approached, her expression a mixture of concern and excitement. Michael unlocked the doors with a reassuring smile for his daughter. "Olivia, this is Ms." He paused, realizing he hadn't asked for her name. "Rodriguez," Samantha supplied, sliding into the back seat on unsteady legs. "Samantha Rodriguez." Michael nodded and turned back to his daughter. "Carter's Market. Rodriguez needed some help. The police will be here soon, and we're going to wait with her until then, okay?" Olivia's eyes were wide. "Did you do your special moves, Daddy?" she asked with surprising directness. Michael's lips twitched in a suppressed smile. "Just enough to keep everyone safe, Bug." He turned to Samantha. "Former military," he explained simply, as if that clarified everything. It took 30 minutes for the police to arrive, take statements, and arrest the two incapacitated attackers. Throughout the process, Michael remained quietly competent, his presence oddly calming. When the officers finally released them, Samantha insisted on buying them dinner, a small token of appreciation that seemed wholly inadequate for what he had done. "Really, it's not necessary," Michael demurred, but Olivia's hopeful expression at the mention of food made him relent. "Well, I suppose we were heading to dinner anyway." They settled on a small family restaurant a safe distance from East Garfield, where Samantha finally regained enough composure to study the man who had come to her rescue with such unexpected skill. Michael Williams had the kind of face that blended into crowds, handsome in an understated way, with intelligent eyes and laugh lines that suggested a life not without joy, despite the watchful alertness that never quite left him. His daughter clearly adored him, her animated chatter about her science project punctuated with frequent glances to ensure he was listening. He was, Samantha noted, giving the child his complete attention despite the extraordinary events of the evening. "So what brought you to East Garfield?" he asked during a lull in Olivia's monologue about volcano models. "I was supposed to meet with a community tech education initiative," Samantha explained, embarrassment coloring her voice. "I think my driver misunderstood the address. I was so busy responding to a crisis at work that I didn't realize where I was until it was too late." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "The Tech Futures program? In the old community center?" When Samantha confirmed, he smiled slightly. "That's on West Garfield Park, not East. Easy mistake for someone not familiar with the city." His lack of judgment was refreshing. In Samantha's world, such an error would have been mercilessly dissected for weaknesses in preparation and attention to detail. "You know the program?" she asked, curious. "I volunteer there sometimes," he explained, teaching encryption basics to high school students. "It's a good program. Gives kids options beyond what they might see in their immediate environment." There was a quiet pride in his voice that intrigued her. This was clearly more than casual volunteer work to him. As the meal progressed, Samantha found herself drawn to the easy relationship between father and daughter, so different from the tense, performance-driven interactions that dominated her corporate world. When the check came, she insisted on paying, waving away Michael's objections. "Please, it's the least I can do." She hesitated, then added, "May I ask what you do?" "When you're not rescuing distracted executives or teaching encryption, that is." Michael smiled slightly. "I'm a freelance security consultant, mostly encryption architecture and vulnerability testing for smaller companies that can't afford in-house teams." He didn't elaborate on his military background, and something in his manner suggested that part of his life was not up for casual discussion. Samantha handed him her business card before they parted ways. "If you ever need anything, a reference, connections, anything at all, please don't hesitate to call. I mean it." Michael glanced at the card, and something flickered across his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or surprise, but it was gone so quickly Samantha wasn't sure she'd seen it at all. "Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. I hope the rest of your Chicago trip is less eventful." His polite smile revealed nothing as he ushered Olivia toward their car, declining Samantha's offer to arrange transportation for them. It wasn't until she was safely in her hotel room that Samantha looked up Michael Williams online, curious about the man who had so competently handled a dangerous situation while maintaining such a gentle demeanor with his daughter. What she found made her sit up straight, fatigue forgotten. Michael Williams wasn't just any security consultant. Before stepping back from corporate life 3 years ago, he had been the lead architect of the Williams-Nakamura encryption protocol, the very foundation upon which TechShield had built their flagship security product. According to industry blogs, he had walked away from a lucrative position following a personal tragedy, choosing to raise his daughter instead of pursuing the executive track that had seemed inevitable for someone of his talents. Further digging revealed something that made Samantha's breath catch. Michael Williams had applied to work at TechShield 18 months ago and been rejected. The next morning, Samantha canceled her remaining meetings and directed her driver to take her to a coffee shop in Lincoln Park that Michael's sparse social media presence suggested he frequented. It was a gamble, but one that paid off when she spotted him in a corner booth, 3 laptop screens open before him, a half-eaten muffin pushed to one side. She ordered a cappuccino and approached his table with more nervousness than she typically felt before multi-million-dollar negotiations. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Michael looked up, recognition flickering across his face. "Ms. Rodriguez, I didn't expect to see you again." His tone was polite, but wary. "Please, call me Samantha," she said, sliding into the seat when he nodded his assent. "I wanted to thank you again for yesterday. And," she paused, gauging his reaction, "to talk to you about something else." Michael waited, his expression neutral. "You're Michael Williams of the Williams-Nakamura Protocol," Samantha stated. "And 18 months ago you applied for a position at TechShield Solutions." Something guarded entered his eyes. "That's correct. Your company wasn't interested in accommodating my parenting responsibilities, which turned out to be for the best. The work I do now allows me to be there for Olivia in ways a corporate position wouldn't." There was no bitterness in his tone, just a matter-of-fact assessment. Samantha leaned forward, her voice dropping slightly. "What if I told you that decision was made without my knowledge? That our COO, Jackson Thompson, rejected your application because he didn't think a single father could be fully committed to the company?" She watched anger flash briefly across Michael's face before he controlled it. "That would be unfortunate, but not surprising," he replied carefully. "The tech industry isn't known for its understanding of work-life balance, particularly for parents." Samantha nodded. "Which is exactly the problem I'm trying to address at TechShield. We're facing a security crisis, Mr. Williams. One that someone with your expertise might be uniquely positioned to help us solve." The conversation that followed was unlike any hiring discussions Samantha had ever conducted. Michael was direct about his priorities. Olivia came first, always. He wouldn't sacrifice her well-being for corporate emergencies or shareholder expectations. His schedule needed flexibility for school pickups, doctor appointments, and the occasional science fair, but within those parameters he was willing to consider consulting on TechShield's security architecture, especially when Samantha explained the recent breach that had sent their stock plummeting and undermined customer confidence. "Your system is built on my protocol," he said thoughtfully. "I'd be interested to see what vulnerabilities were exploited." 3 days later, Michael Williams signed a consulting agreement with terms unprecedented in TechShield's corporate history: remote work options, flexible hours, and direct reporting to the CEO, bypassing the traditional management structure that might have balked at his unconventional arrangement. Jackson Thompson, the COO who had originally rejected his application, made no effort to hide his displeasure when Samantha announced the decision at the executive committee meeting. "We're bringing in a part-timer to fix what our full-time team couldn't?" he asked, his skepticism evident. "We're bringing in the architect who designed the foundation of modern encryption systems," Samantha corrected smoothly. Michael's insights have already identified 3 critical vulnerabilities our team missed. As weeks passed, Michael's contributions to TechShield's security overhaul proved invaluable. He approached problems with a methodology that reflected both his military background and his parental perspective: systematic, thorough, but always with an awareness of the human impact of technical decisions. Samantha found herself increasingly drawn to his thoughtful approach, so different from the aggressive competition that characterized most of her professional interactions. They began meeting regularly outside the formal consulting structure, coffee discussions that evolved into dinner conversations, occasional weekend walks where Olivia would enthusiastically explain her latest science experiment, while the adults discussed encryption architecture and the future of tech security. Not everyone at TechShield approved of the developing relationship between the CEO and her consultant. Office rumors ranged from accusations of favoritism to speculation about romantic involvement. Jackson Thompson made his disapproval clear during an executive committee meeting in early July. "The board is concerned about your judgment lately," he informed Samantha as they reviewed quarterly projections. "Bringing in an outsider with no current corporate experience, giving him access to our most sensitive systems, spending personal time with him outside of work. It raises questions." Samantha's expression hardened. "The board is concerned, or you are, Jackson, because Michael's security protocol has outperformed all projections. Our stock has recovered 15% since implementation. It's not just about results, Jackson persisted. It's about appearances. You're the face of this company, and you're frequently seen with a subordinate. Samantha leaned forward, her voice dropping dangerously. He's not a subordinate, he's a consultant who reports directly to me, and my personal time is my own. What neither of them knew was that as this conversation was taking place, Olivia was sitting alone in the school nurse's office with a high fever, trying repeatedly to reach her father. Michael's phone, silenced for an important client meeting, missed the school's calls. When he finally checked his messages an hour later, panic set in. He was across town, at least 45 minutes from reaching her. Desperate, he called Samantha, interrupting her confrontation with Jackson. Without hesitation, she grabbed her coat and left mid-meeting, instructing her assistant to cancel her appointments for the rest of the day. She reached the school in 20 minutes, finding a pale Olivia curled up on the nurse's cot. "Your dad's on his way," Samantha assured her, smoothing back the girl's damp curls. "But I thought you might like some company until he gets here." Olivia looked up at her with feverish eyes. "You left work for me?" she asked weakly, genuine surprise in her voice despite her illness. Samantha felt something twist in her chest at the child's reaction. "Some things are more important than meetings," she replied simply, helping Olivia gather her belongings. By the time Michael arrived, breathless and worried, Samantha had already taken Olivia home, settled her on the couch with her favorite blanket, and was preparing chicken soup in the kitchen. The sight of them together, Samantha reading softly from Olivia's science book while his daughter dozed against her shoulder, stopped Michael in his tracks. Something shifted in his chest, a door opening that he had kept firmly shut since his wife's death 3 years earlier. That evening, after Olivia had fallen asleep and the doctor had confirmed it was just a seasonal flu, Michael and Samantha sat in his living room, the city lights twinkling through the windows. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. "You dropped everything." "Don't thank me," Samantha replied, her voice equally soft. "This is what people do for each other, for people they care about." Their eyes met, the unspoken growing between them. Michael reached across the sofa, his fingers just brushing hers. The moment was interrupted by the harsh buzz of her phone, an urgent call from the board chair that couldn't be ignored. But something had fundamentally changed between them, a recognition neither was quite ready to name, but both felt with unexpected clarity. In the weeks that followed, they settled into a comfortable rhythm, their professional collaboration enhanced by a deepening personal connection that neither had anticipated but both increasingly valued. The annual TechShield shareholder meeting fell in mid-July, a critical juncture for the company's recovery narrative. Samantha had been preparing for weeks, refining the presentation that would reassure investors about the company's security posture and future direction. Michael had helped design key portions of the technical demonstration, though he would not be attending the high-profile event. The morning of the meeting, however, brought unexpected complications. A tech blog published an article claiming inside sources had revealed new vulnerabilities in TechShield's updated security system, vulnerabilities that supposedly exposed users to even greater risks than before the patch. The story spread rapidly through financial news channels, sending the company's stock into a renewed tailspin hours before the shareholder meeting. Samantha and her team scrambled to investigate the claims, finding no evidence of the reported flaws. "This is deliberate sabotage," Samantha told her gathered executives in the war room they'd established. "Someone with internal knowledge is feeding false information to the press." Jackson Thompson maintained a carefully concerned expression. "Perhaps your consultant's solutions weren't as robust as you believed," he suggested smoothly. "Williams has been out of the corporate game for years. Perhaps he's lost his edge." Samantha's eyes narrowed. "Michael's code has been reviewed by our entire security team. There are no vulnerabilities matching the blog's description." "Nevertheless," Jackson continued, "the board feels we need to show decisive action. They're suggesting we publicly announce that we're terminating the consulting arrangement and bringing in a more established security firm." He slid a press release across the table. "I've taken the liberty of drafting a statement." Samantha scanned the document, anger building with each line. The statement not only ended Michael's contract but implied his work had been substandard, positioning him as a scapegoat for the company's troubles. "This is unacceptable," she said flatly, tearing the paper in half. I won't throw an innocent person under the bus to appease the market. Meanwhile, Michael was conducting his own investigation. Something about the timing of the leaked vulnerabilities had triggered his suspicions. For weeks, he had noticed subtle anomalies in the system logs, access patterns that didn't align with regular development activities. He had initially attributed them to the chaotic workflow during the security overhaul, but now he wondered if there was something more deliberate at play. Using techniques developed during his military intelligence days, he began tracking the digital footprints through TechShield's systems. The trail led to an unexpected destination. Jackson Thompson's account showed evidence of unauthorized data exfiltration and communication with external parties, including the tech blogger who had published the damaging story. Digging deeper, Michael uncovered financial records showing substantial short positions Jackson had taken against TechShield stock immediately before each negative story broke. The pattern was unmistakable. Jackson was deliberately sabotaging the company he was sworn to protect, positioning himself to profit from its failure. But proving it would be challenging. Jackson had been careful to cover his tracks, and corporate politics meant that the word of a consultant might not stand against that of a long-established COO. As Michael compiled his evidence, his home security system alerted him to an unusual vehicle parked outside. Through his window, he spotted two men who matched the profile of hired muscle rather than casual visitors. Michael's tactical training kicked in immediately. He secured his evidence on encrypted drives, contacted a trusted former military colleague to serve as a backup, and calmly called Olivia's friend's mother to ensure his daughter would remain safely at her playdate. Then he prepared to confront his watchers. The confrontation was brief but decisive. When the two men attempted to intimidate him with vague threats about backing off if he knew what was good for him, Michael demonstrated that their physical advantage was illusory. He left them with a clear message for their employer. The evidence was secured and would be released automatically if anything happened to him or his daughter. The shareholder meeting began in an atmosphere of tension. Investors filled the conference room, expressions ranging from concerned to openly hostile. Samantha took the podium, outwardly composed despite the chaos of the morning. She had just begun her presentation when the doors at the back of the room opened. Michael Williams walked in, his face set with determination. Without acknowledging the surprised murmurs, he made his way to the front of the room and handed Samantha a USB drive. "Evidence," he said quietly. "I think you'll want to amend your presentation." Confused but trusting, Samantha inserted the drive into her laptop. What appeared on the screen behind her caused an audible gasp from the assembled shareholders. Email correspondence between Jackson Thompson and several technology bloggers revealed a coordinated campaign to discredit TechShield's security patch, and by extension, Samantha's leadership. Financial records showed substantial short positions Jackson had taken against TechShield's stock immediately before each negative story broke. Most damning were the surveillance photos of the men Jackson had sent to intimidate Michael, along with recorded audio of their threats. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Eleanor Winters, the board chairwoman, rising from her seat in the front row. Jackson started to protest, but Michael cut him off. "As a security consultant, I was asked to investigate vulnerabilities," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent room. "I found them, just not in the code." Security personnel discreetly approached Jackson as Samantha regained control of the meeting. Michael regained control of the meeting. With remarkable poise, she pivoted the presentation to address the new information, outlining the actual security improvements implemented and the stronger oversight measures now in place to prevent internal sabotage. By the time she concluded, the mood in the room had shifted dramatically. Investors who had arrived ready to demand her resignation were now applauding her transparency and decisive action. TechShield's stock, which had plummeted that morning, began to recover, even before the meeting adjourned. In the empty conference room afterward, Samantha found Michael gathering his belongings. "You could have been hurt," she said quietly, the implications of the day's revelations sinking in. "Those men Jackson sent," Michael shook his head. "I've dealt with worse. And I couldn't let him destroy what you've built, what we've been working to protect." "Why?" Samantha asked, stepping closer. "This wasn't your fight. TechShield rejected you, thanks to Jackson. You could have walked away." Michael looked at her steadily. Because some things matter more than corporate politics or personal grudges. Because what we're building here goes beyond TechShield. It's about creating technology that respects the humans who use it. He paused, then added more softly, and because I care about what happens to you, Samantha. More than I expected to. The admission hung between them, honest and unadorned. Samantha closed the distance between them, her hand finding his. I care too, she said simply. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise. Autumn brought sweeping changes to TechShield. Jackson Thompson faced securities fraud charges, while the company implemented Samantha's family-forward tech initiative, creating flexible working arrangements that acknowledged employees' lives outside the office. Michael accepted the position of Chief Security Officer, with terms that protected his time with Olivia, while allowing him to guide the company's security vision. The most dramatic change was TechShield's new community outreach program in East Garfield, the very neighborhood where Samantha had found herself in danger months earlier. Why should technology education be limited to those already privileged? She had reasoned to the board. Let's invest where our impact can truly transform lives. On a crisp October evening, Samantha stood at a podium in the renovated community center in East Garfield, addressing the first graduating class of TechShield's Security Fundamentals program. Beside her, Michael watched with quiet pride as 20 local high school students received their certification, the first step toward careers in the rapidly growing cybersecurity field. Among them was Diego Martinez, the younger brother of one of the men who had followed Samantha that fateful night. Second chances, Samantha had insisted, were at the core of the program's philosophy. In the audience, Olivia beamed with pride, herself a junior instructor who had helped teach basic coding concepts to the younger siblings of participants. 6 months ago, I took a wrong turn and found myself lost in this neighborhood, Samantha told the gathered families and community members. I was focused on the wrong things, distracted by what seemed important in the moment but ultimately wasn't. That mistake could have ended badly. Instead, it led me here, to a new understanding of what technology should serve and what truly matters. She glanced at Michael and Olivia, her expression softening. We build security systems to protect what matters, but sometimes we forget to ask what truly matters. Is it quarterly growth, stock options, market dominance, or is it the people our technology impacts, the lives it enhances, the communities it strengthens, the relationships it fosters? As applause filled the room, Samantha knew with certainty that getting lost that rainy night had been the first step toward finding her way, not just through the dangerous streets of East Garfield, but through the equally treacherous landscape of a life defined solely by corporate success. In Michael and Olivia, she had found something she hadn't realized was missing, a family. And in her work with the community that had once frightened her, she had found purpose beyond profit margins. Sometimes, Samantha reflected as Michael's hand found hers beneath the podium, the most valuable security isn't found in encryption protocols or corporate firewalls, but in the connections we forge when we're brave enough to venture beyond our comfortable familiar paths.